Today we'll return our focus a little bit to walking. We'll float the head back, crown rise, soften the knees, sinking down into the hips, flexing from the hips a little bit. Tilt the body slightly forward. So we open the back, lengthen the spine, start to sink the weight down. Relax the face and jaw. Put the tongue at the roof of the mouth. Spread the hands, slightly cup the palms. Shoulders sink down into the back. As the back opens, feel it gently enclosing the deep chest. Relax the breath down into the abdomen. Tailbone drop under, lengthening the low back. Feel the tip of the tailbone is gently lifted. Feel how that helps produce a very slight suggestion of an arch connecting the two legs. Relax down through the back and the outside of the hips. So we feel a little lift up through the inner leg. Loosen the weight all the way down through the legs and feet, and the feet spread and lightly grasp the floor. The arch is activated. We're simultaneously releasing excess tension down into the floor. Feeling a little lift or support rising up through the center of the body. Often we say outwardly sinking and internally lifted. That sense of lift should be very light and spontaneous. Rock our weight gently forward and back on the feet. And the feet spread out so we come forward. Grasp the ground as we sit back. About 70% of the weight. Pause and shift the weight side to side. Continue to soften, sink the hips. And then circle. Feel that circling down the feet and ankles, but also up in the hips. And I'm really just focusing on maintaining that arch, keeping that tailbone dropped under, lengthening the low back, keeping my weight very even on the feet, meaning as my weight shifts 70-30, the 30% that's left here is very evenly distributed in that foot. So that's a feeling that's also very easy to lose and something I just want to constantly return to. Now, if I add the turning to it, now, once again, you see my pelvis rotating, yes. But the only problem I have with saying, yeah, the pelvis is rotating here, is that we have to locate the source of that rotation below the pelvis at the hip joint. Why is the pelvis rotating? Because the movement is generated down here in the hips. There's also a little rotation in my ankle, but not much. And that's why my knees keep pointing forward, sort of in line with the direction of my toes. And then reverse. Shifting one side, but turning the other way. And again, how to maintain that nice round arch and not let the lighter leg start to fall in. But again, I don't want to do that with rigidity or stiffness. We want to open up the hips a little bit more. I can take an even wider step. I'm going to make sure it's comfortable for you. So when I say wider, It's going to vary a little bit for everybody. Here, I'm going to toe out and squat down a little bit into that leg. So as I do that, toe out on the other side, my knee goes out over my toes. So that's a very important part of this kind of lateral squatting. And again, the 30% of my weight that's left in this foot is evenly distributed. So the little toe stays down. If the weight's evenly distributed in that light leg, it tends to be correct in the heavier side. Now, how this is often done, right, in preparation for Tai Chi, for instance, it shows up in some of the postures, is that as I squat down into this leg, I turn a little bit to the other side. So yes, again, my pelvis is going to rotate, but that movement comes from the hip. So I could do this with a narrower stance and not go as low. You want to make sure it's relatively comfortable, just a little bit of a challenge. And the challenge is felt through the thicker part of the muscle and not at the knee. So I keep my head back, I try to drop my tailbone under, and try to maintain all the points of that foundation posture still. Shake out the legs. So if we review the basic walking, we'll bring the heels together, toes out. Sink down to that leg, step out. Here there is some rotation, again from the hip. The leg swings a little bit back, makes a small arc. The two heels end up in line, toe in. So as I come to the center, I toe in. And as I continue to this side, about 70%, my pelvis turns out to the other side, and then toe in. That's the Tai Chi commencement. We were talking last week a little bit about how we sink the weight to lift the arms. We start to feel kind of lifting force in the back of the arm, back of the wrist here. That's the ping feeling, or ward off, as it's usually translated to English, but I prefer to pushing up or expanding upward, expanding outward. It's a little more clear definition or translation. Then I sink the elbows and knees together, right? The elbows and knees flex at the same time, hands are coming back. And then as I continue to lower my body, the hands sink down, palms feel heavy. That's my on, pressing down. And each time I just release back up. So you see at the end, that same foundation posture, but a little deeper. So once we squat down just slightly, we go from what's often called that Wuji posture to the Tai Chi posture. The posture we're going to be doing the entire Tai Chi, stepping, whatever forms we're doing. And you can step out to the other side as well. It's good not to just get locked into one side. Good. And now we're prepared to review the walking quickly. Toe out. Shift the weight. Let that back hip open up Sink the weight through that back leg even as we're moving forward. Keep the tailbone dropped under. And step up. After I step up, or even as I step up, I'm turning a little to the front. So I'm going to feel some of that rotation again in the hip joints. Is the pelvis rotating a little forward? Yes, just slightly. But focus down at the hip joints. And at the end, I'm really squaring the hips up. Sit back, front toes start to lift. Push forward, sink the weight through that back leg, sink the tailbone under. Stretch all that out, about 70-30 again with the weight. And then we step up. So as I turn out to this side, this is the biggest stretch, right? It's all in the hips. This knee is pointing the same direction as those toes, right? So both hips are swinging open like a pair of gates on hinges. Stretch out. Keep that little toe sinking, the back heel down, and step up. Face this way. That way I'm not walking off screen. And I keep one level height. Step up, turn around. Squaring the hips up. So they're facing forward. As I sit back, I turn, right? My pelvis a little bit more, letting that back hip open up in particular. Shifting forward, maybe even turning out a little bit more. But as I step up, I'm going to start turning very subtly to the front. Just a little bit at first, step out, maybe a little more. Starting to shift the weight, tiny bit more. And then I'll see the completion of that turn as I move from about 50-50 with my weight to 70% forward. So back, starting to turn out. So I'm still going in the same direction, really. All the way until I step up and there's a turn, right? There's a change, rather. So my hips always have a feeling of turning one way or the other. If I don't start to turn to the front here, meaning the way I was walking, then the whole movement sort of comes to a halt, sort of a creaking halt. Everything's pointing the same way, right? My nose, my belt buckle, my toes, and something about it feels not so dynamic. So at that point, I already need to be looking forward just a little bit. So look before you leap. It gives me an idea of where I'm going. And it also puts just a little rotation in the body that gives it a little energy. Sinking down, staying in the hip crease. So that's just a brief review of the basic walking. We've been doing a little bit of this press down movement as we've been going. But I want to look at one of the other very common techniques where we feel a counterbalance between the two arms. So the first thing I'm going to do is just do a couple of side bends. leading from the head, the crown of the head floating up away from the body. Sink the shoulders, the hips, drop the tailbone under. So here the side bending is mostly in the upper spine. And my hip bones, pelvis staying level, right? I'm not seeing any, right? So we did some tilting of the pelvis back and forth before. Now I see that stay stable as I move the upper spine. And this is commonly done with one hand up, one hand down. And for a moment, if I take the obvious side bend out, I'm going to press down with one hand and try to connect it to the upper hand. So that it feels like pushing down lifts the other hand, like there's a connection through my back, from arm to arm, through the back and spine. Relax a little bit, switch, both elbows start a little bent, and then as I press one hand down, it lifts the other hand. So now you can see my head staying stable right in position. My whole torso, my hips are nice and straight. Trying to just feel that exchange between the hands. But it stretches open one side, right? And on the other side kind of gives me a feeling of consolidating and bringing together. Now, if I added the side bend, it makes it really obvious, maybe a little easier to feel the connection between the arms. This is not typically the way we do it in Tai Chi, but as a foundation exercise, it's very useful. Now, if I go back to keeping my torso straight, trying to find that same feeling when only the arms are visibly moving, right? So again, I feel that lengthening. There's a kind of side bend happening, like I'm making more space between the ribs on one side and consolidating it on the other, but without seeing, right, the upper spine moving back and forth. That's a really important idea here. I can also bring the hands down and up along the center line, as if I'm catching a ball. So you'll see the hand that's coming up rolls to the outside. That upper hand faces down, right? Both palms turn to face each other. But then the upper hand is just going to continue going down. It's pretty even. Right? Once it turns down, it's just going to drop. The lower hand can't keep lifting in this position. It has to turn all the way over and face up the other way. It goes from being supinated to pronated. And that's why that hand rolls to the front. So these are a couple variations of a very common exercise in Chinese medical movement, right? Or medical Qigong. This one famously being for digestion, amongst other things, because it affects the spleen and stomach channels. I'm not going to unpack that. We don't have that kind of time. But in the simplified Tai Chi that was developed in the 1950s in China, This is the first movement that comes after the commencement. A movement called wild horse parts its mane. So you can see it's similar. I'm just letting my hands shear a little bit. So coming back, there's that palm to palm feeling like I'm catching a ball right in the center. Upper hands basically right at the center of my chest. The lower hand at or slightly below the navel. But now as I bring them together, I'm going to let them shear apart so they're in front of my shoulders, basically. Let's turn again. And you can maybe feel how this is pretty similar to what we were just doing. And following the same strategy, the hand that's dropping lifts the other hand. Right, so I want to feel like the lift comes from the side that's dropping, like the two arms of a balance scale, right? You put the weight on one side and the other side of the scale lifts, the other plate lifts. It's got that kind of feeling. And we could talk about the meridians or the channels in Chinese medicine, but for the purposes of Tai Chi, it's much more useful to say, can I feel how the middle of the body is kind of the fulcrum for this, right? These joined movements, right? If I had a scale, right? Say I had a balance scale that had pivoted with a base, right? It's the fulcrum in the center, right, that connects the plate that's dropping to the plate that's lifting. So feeling that centered perhaps right under the rib cage, right in the upper abdomen here. And I can just add that awareness to the feeling like, oh yeah, there's a little change through the ribs, through the flanks here, the sides of the body. One, right, on the side that's lifting, it feels like it's opening up a little bit, and on the other side, it feels like it's consolidating a little. So I'm aware of those two sides, right? Same way as I was here, but that made it really obvious. But I'm also aware of the middle. Now the hand is rising up. As it rises up, it also is reaching out. That happens pretty much automatically. Just like a hand that's sinking down is going to tend to retreat or come in toward the body. That's just the geometry of my shoulder, right? If I swing my shoulder, it makes a circle. As the hand rises, it's moving away from my body a little bit. The hand that's dropping, that feels like it's driving that lift, is moving forward. So there's an up and down, and or rather the lower hand's moving back toward the body. So there's an up and down, there's a left and right, and there's a forward and backward. So all three dimensions. And I might even be able to go back to the idea of walking, feel a little play in my feet. Like when I do this, my weight is, for the moment, staying in the middle. But I can feel some difference between the 2 feet, perhaps. So we're already over time again. But let me let you see what this looks like. You can follow along if you want. This is what my goal was with today's class. And we'll pick it up next week. For now, I'm not going to worry too much about how my hands get here, but when I turn to one side, that I'm just going to let that hand lift. And there I am, like I'm holding a ball. Same stepping, step out, and as I start to shift the weight, the hands start to exchange places, which means at first they're moving towards one another, gently squeezing in. About 50-50, and as I finish turning, they separate. Now in this turn, I am not trying to square my hips all the way. I'm still turning to the front. But when I have the same arm and leg forward like this, I don't want to twist all the way to the front 90% of the time. There are exceptions to that. But right here, while my hips feel like they're turning slightly to the front, it's not as big a turn. Which means there's a little more turning that happens once I start sitting back. And all I'm letting my hands do now is turn over. So they're starting to face one another. Shift forward. And I can start to feel at that moment how the hands start to come together again. Step up. I was just going to demonstrate, and here I am teaching it. So you can see the hands are not moving very quickly, and they're not moving very much. They're just starting to turn towards one another. As I start to shift forward, they start to come together. Happens a little bit more as I step up, step out. And as I start to shift forward into that new stance, the hands actually come together a little bit more. They only separate at the very end. With that last part of the weight shift from about 50-50 to 70-30. Again, I'm trying to keep these little sessions short. That's Wild Horse Parts It's Made. I think it was put at the beginning of this sort of simplified Tai Chi that was made for the general population. Because it's a nice big gesture. It's a little easier to feel something happening, right, than some of the small subtle gestures. And it's very easy to sort of coordinate the arms and legs together, right? Same arm and leg forward. It's a very clear picture. Right? It's a little bit more of an obvious stretch than many of the Tai Chi postures, so it feels good to sort of warm up the body with. But it does express some very basic relationships. So probably not a bad choice to start this simplified form. Let's just shake out the arms and legs. When I lift one leg, it's very similar to this press one hand down to lift the other feeling. So sink the weight through one leg to lift the other leg. There's something quite similar about the basic relationship. All right. Thank you.